Hello. Welcome to the Churchill Club. We are so excited to share with you the evening ahead. First, some brief comments and some thanks are definitely in order, starting with a few words about Churchill Club. Since 1985, which you may recall as the year of Windows 1.0, this is one of the world's premier independent stages for important conversations about technology and business innovation. Our passion is to inspire and fortify people everywhere who desire to contribute to innovation, economic growth, and social good as better leaders, collaborators, mentors, and citizens. In the programs that we create for you, we look for what's new, next, not widely discussed, to surface new insights and new inspiration that can result in new opportunities, can and has resulted in new opportunities to meet the future together. We thank Microsoft for our partnership of many years and for support of this special program, notably Frank Shaw, Doug Dawson, and Caitlin McCabe. Thank you so much. We also thank our distinguished longtime partner and sponsor, Accenture, notably Julie Rosendahl. Thank you. And a warm welcome to Adobe, Dunn and Bradstreet, Fidelity Investments, Collective, Ness, Digital Engineering, Osborne Clark, Pros, and last but definitely not least, SAP. I now call to the stage someone who is very special to us. He is a director and former chair of the Churchill Club board. He is also senior managing director for Accenture's communications, media, and technology business across all of North America. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. John Walsh.
Okay. All right, thank you, Karen. On behalf of Accenture and the Churchill Club, I am privileged to introduce two extraordinary individuals who are driving positive change in the industry and the world at large, Reid Hoffman and Satya Nadella. First on Reid. Reid has been called the most connected man in Silicon Valley. He is an investor, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. He is a partner at top venture capital firm Greylock Partners, co-founder of LinkedIn, Microsoft and PayPal board member, New York Times bestselling author, and he hosts a podcast called The Masters of Scale. In 2016, Reid was recognized at the annual Churchill's event as Global Benefactor of the Year. Interesting, the Churchill Club also had Reid on this very stage in 2012 interviewing Microsoft's last CEO, Steve Ballmer. Now, mind you, that was before Reid was part of the Microsoft family. One of my favorite quotes from Reid is, "The world of tomorrow will be more like the Silicon Valley of today, constant change and chaos." This is a theme I'm sure we'll hear about more in tonight's conversation. And that brings me to tonight's guest of honor, who is, of course, Satya Nadella, Chief Executive Officer of Microsoft. Satya was just 21 when he emigrated from Hyderabad to the US to pursue a master's degree in computer science. He joined Microsoft in 1992 and became its CEO in 2014. In a recent Wired interview, Satya said, "I am the product of two uniquely American things, which is American technology reaching me where I was growing up and giving me the opportunity to dream the dream of coming here, and then the immigration policy allowing me to stay and live that dream. I think of those two opportunities I was given as something America should always stand for." Satya is well known today as a unique and exceptional leader who has not only successfully positioned his company on the forefront of technology, but he has also subtly changed its culture. In fact, under Satya, Microsoft revised its mission statement to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. In his new book, released last Tuesday, called Hit Refresh, Satya adds, "Microsoft and its employees must have a higher calling. Each individual must pursue personal passions to empower others." I am humbled and proud of the long-standing relationship Accenture has had with Microsoft and our joint venture Avanade, and I am incredibly optimistic about our future together with Satya at the helm. So before I bring them to a stage, I'd like to invite you all to watch a short video.
Where does inspiration come from? Where does innovation begin? Where does the future really start? Our story began in a dorm room in 1975 on a strip of paper. And from there, a vision was born. We designed technology to build, technology to grow, technology to learn, explore, and create. And we turned a world of possibility into a world of reality. But no journey is without obstacles, and our challenges only encouraged us to go further. This is a new chapter. With new frontiers, new possibilities, new obstacles, and a renewed passion and vision to face them all.
It is our mission to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more.
Now, please join me in welcoming Reid and Satya to the stage.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, welcome to Silicon Valley.
Thank you so much, Reid. Thank you so much for that introduction as well. And it's great to be here.
So let's start with why write a book? It's like doing a startup, and you already have a fairly big job.
It's a great question. It's the right place to start. In fact, the inspiration to even write the book came when I went and met Steve Ballmer 6 months or so after he had retired. And I asked him, "Are you writing a book?" And he said, "No, that's the past. I'm off to the future." And when I heard him say that, and when I went back, and I felt that most business books are written as look-backs, either whether it's a grand success or a grand failure, but it's mostly about looking back. I mostly started out even trying to capture the chaos that one is going through while in the process. So it was never meant to be about having reached any destination. It's definitely not meant to be of having achieved any grand success. But I wanted to capture the meditations of a sitting CEO, if you will, and all of the unanswered questions. And then, of course, the two stanzas that came more naturally to me were the ones around Microsoft and the world. The hard one was to write about the look back of my life. But nevertheless, that was the inspiration for it.
Well, why don't we start with a hard one then,
Yeah.
since, starting with moments of discomfort. What was, I think you were unusual for, and this is, of course, reflection of you, of actually reflecting some of the personal parts of your journey. It's the kind of what the hopes and kind of the lens that your son has given you, but also kind of your own journey from India to here. What do you think is because it's all future-oriented, so when you look at those stories of yourself, what are you hoping to share with the world in terms of sharing your own personal story?
This metaphor that we picked, hit refresh, in fact, Bill in the foreword, I think, captured it well. The logic of the browser function of hit refresh has this one property, which is you don't change everything. You're smart about changing only the things that need to be changed. And when I reflected on that, I wanted to go back in my own life and try and capture what were those hit refresh moments. Clearly, one such moment was even being given the first Sinclair Z80. And wow, that did change my life.
Hold on one second. How many people remember what a Sinclair Z80 is? Well, a few.
It's good. I feel young. But it's not definitely, as I write in the book, I was not particularly academically good or interested in academics. I was all into cricket. But nevertheless, this one thing that happened where my dad got me this computer, and that's when I think now, in retrospect, I feel like I got the power of software. Man, I can write a program and it does things which I didn't even write, which could have been bugs. But nevertheless, I got the power. The second thing that happened to me was coming to the States. I'd never been to the west of Bombay, and I showed up in Wisconsin. And that was, I'm
not sure that's quite hit refresh.
Believe me, it is like, it's fascinating. And then I remember even the journey which is related to perhaps even this broader theme that I try to call out in the book, which is around developing this increasing sense of empathy by, in some sense, learning the hard lessons when you don't show it, right? I mean, that's the main point. It's not like, oh, you're born with some innate capability, but it's more that if you listen to the life's lessons, you build a skill, and this skill is not just good in life, but it's good at innovation. But the first moment was this interview question. After 8 hours of interviews at Microsoft, my last interviewer asked me this question of, hey, what would you do if a baby is fallen on the ground? And I think, like, after having solved all these math puzzles for 8 hours, I thought, God, this is some algorithm I've forgotten. I didn't learn. Must be a trick question. I go think a bunch, and then I say, I'll call 911. So he gets up, and he walks out, and he shows me the door, and he says, you know what? When a baby is fallen, you pick them up and hug them. And I said, geez, I blew it. But lo and behold, I did get the job. But the one that I talk about in the book, which perhaps has shaped me the most, was the birth of my son 21 years ago. Anu and I were only children of our parents, so the birth of our first son was a much anticipated thing for the entire family. And even a couple of hours before he was born, I would have sort of mostly, been thinking about, or we were all thinking about, oh, is the nursery going to be ready? When is Anu going to go back to her job as an architect? And all of those, things that one thinks about. And then everything changed that night. Zane was born because of some in utero asphyxiation with severe damage to his brain, and then it resulting in cerebral palsy. And for the first, I would say, maybe 2.5 years, I was mostly focused on what happened to me. Why did this happen to us? All the plans that I had are all now up in the air, and they've changed, and life's not going to be quote-unquote normal. Whereas for my wife, she came out of the C-section. The next day, she's driving Zane up and down to different therapies, making sure that he gets the best shot. So without necessarily schooling me, I got schooled over perhaps those 2 years, and finally came to the realization that nothing actually happened to me. Something happened to Zane, my son, and therefore I needed to step up as a parent. That was a hit refresh moment, because I think that is when I started realizing that seeing life through others' eyes is so important, definitely in your personal life. And then I realized that that's what leaders do to have any followership at work, but not just followership at work, to innovate at work. I realized that what do? In fact, the core to innovation is to meet the unmet, unarticulated needs of customers. And that has to come from perhaps that deeper sense of empathy you have for what's that unarticulated need. And so that's the thread where who I am because of life's experience now definitely shapes who I am at work.
Well, and I thought one of the things that was rare and important about that part of the book and that part of sharing was to say, look, part of leadership is not trying to be this aloof, inhuman person. It's we all have these life experiences, and that's part of what connects us together. And if you're going to be a good leader where people can feel, I feel not only are you sharing a mission, but you're sharing parts of your life with us. Right? And I thought I think that's a hallmark of what successful leadership going forward is, which was one of the reasons I thought starting with a personal story was so important, both in the book and also here with us. So let's move from there to Microsoft, right? Because obviously part of the whole idea in Hit Refresh is, look, this is a bit of past, but what's important is the future. What's important is how do we get there? How do we build the right connections with employees, with customers, with the world at large? And so how did these experiences of kind of the human tapestry, of empathy, of growth psychology, then kind of say, here is what we're doing when I step into the CEO job?
Yeah. See, one of the things that struck me, and I'm still very much a student of how do companies over a long period of time achieve success, because that's one of the fundamental challenges. We are in our 43rd year. It was fun to watch even the video and all the logos we had over those years. And when you go from being a startup to a successful company, the following thing happens, which is the idea you had, the concept you had becomes a hit. Around it, you build all the capability, human capability and other. And then the culture grows around it. So there's this fantastic virtuous cycle between the concept, the capability, and the culture. And then round and round it goes. Except the problem is that concept, however novel it was during the day, ultimately there's no such thing as a perpetual motion machine. It'll run out of gas. You need a new idea, a new concept. For that, you need new capability. And the culture better help you build that long before it's conventional wisdom. That's the challenge of successful companies, right? Because culture is not, I mean, for a startup, and it's rightfully so, you might say, hey, look, I got to get the idea and execute on the idea. And the culture grows with it. But for a successful company, I think you got to watch to make sure that the culture is not inhibiting you to grow. So one of the things I felt, so I went on this lookout. I said, like, Microsoft needs a learning culture. And I was looking for this meme that we could even introduce into the company that could even foster a dialogue around culture. And it was a struggle for me because I remember, I mean, learning culture is a nice thing to say, and it's, even in my own career at Microsoft, we have posters we would put up, and I don't myself remember all the attributes of culture and what have you. Interestingly enough, a couple of years before I became CEO, my wife had introduced me to Carol Dweck's work around mindset. And that book, when I read it, had a profound impact on us in the context of our children. But the simple concept in that, which is it's better to be a learn-it-all, even if the know-it-all has more innate capability, because the learn-it-all ultimately does better, applies to people like me as CEOs, it applies to companies at large, is what I took away. And so I said, let's grab hold of that as the culture that then leads. If you have a learn-it-all culture, that's the best actionable way to develop empathy, is sort of the intuitive leap I made. And that's been one of the cores of what we're trying to do at Microsoft.
So I know personally you do that because amongst the delights I have in working with you is you're always asking questions, right? That's the kind of hallmark of learning. Part of what you can learn about you and people who do this is like which questions you're asking and how you're doing it. And generally speaking, I find that the questions you ask are in that category of, okay, what do I not know that I should know, right? Which is a really important part of an actual learning psychology. What were the ways that you started getting the organization more focused on that? Because obviously one of the huge challenges of stepping into the Microsoft job is this behemoth corporation with many lines of business, a lot of complexity. Just running all that complexity takes a lot of time. But now you're trying to say, okay, let's really focus on learning. So what were the...
Yeah, that's a great... I mean, because trying to make this all, from sort of abstract to something practical is one of the core challenges we face. And we very much are in the throes of it. But I'll say a couple of things. One is, we said, how do I practice this every day? The first one was, Customer obsession. At Microsoft, one of the challenges we've had is, as products have become successful, then you say, well, let me metric it, let me think of it as a business onto its own, except that customers don't really care about our product. They care about the solutions that they need that may involve, in fact, multiple things even from our own company. So breaking that barrier of no one respects your own org structure and they care about innovation, that means it starts with customer obsession. Whether it's the person in the field sales or in engineering, whether you're looking at log files or you're listening to the customer. Both of them are two forms of listening to customers. But really being expansive versus being bound by category definitions of the past. So that customer obsession is one. The second one, which has probably been the one that we have the most amount of work to do, but the most amount of excitement inside of the company, is diversity and inclusion. One of the, we talk about our mission as empowering every person in every organization. The business case for then representing the world inside is just as clear as day. And it's not just representation, it is about the inclusion. Can everyone, every gender and every ethnic minority do their best work inside the company? That requires real drastic change in behaviors, the ability even to conduct a meeting and such that there's inclusive behavior. So that's another place where you can practice it. Like I feel like, hey, you want to learn this growth mindset, practice it in every meeting. And then the last piece is a little more about breaking the Microsoft org silos. We have this thing which we talk about as One Microsoft. And a good manifestation is, like Office and Windows, still massive parts of us. But we don't talk about Office and Windows. We talk about something called Microsoft 365 because we've realized for most of our commercial customers or small business customers or even individuals, what they care about is the end-to-end, how are we helping them with their communication needs, with their productivity needs, with their security. And really, instead of being bound by any category definitions of the past, can we bring all of these things together? So those are practical things that we are trying to say, let's practice it. And it's more about, it's not like, let's not overly scorecard. The one thing we're trying to avoid in all of this is new corporate dogma. Because if this was viewed as, hey, Satya's new dogma, I think we'll go nowhere. And the idea is to say, let's give it breathing space.
So one of the things that I was impressed with and delighted by, but I also thought that Silicon Valley didn't have as good a lens on, was the depth of the technology and the future that actually Microsoft has been working on. And that has been part of my own journey in our conversations. Like, boy, folks down here should know a lot more about what's happening up in Microsoft. So let's shift to technology as part of Microsoft. So let's start with mixed reality. And why don't we start with, how do you look at mixed reality? How do you think it's key in terms of the future? And then is mixed reality the same as augmented reality, or is it different? In which ways is it different?
Yeah. And before I get even to the specific of mixed reality, the one point I would make, Reid, is just like culture, one of the other areas we really focused on is to be very clear about our sense of purpose and mission. In some sense, you can go back all the way to the birth of the company. After all, Paul and Bill's first product was the basic interpreter for the Altair. Therein lies, I think, a lot of who we are. Most people say, hey, what are you? Are you a consumer company, an enterprise company? I think of us as a tool maker and a platform maker. That's what comes naturally to us, right? Which is, let's build technology so that others can build more technology. That's how we are wired to think about, especially in today's world where every business is a digital business. We want to be the tool maker for those businesses. In that context, the way we think about mixed reality is as follows. I mean, first of all, I believe this is the ultimate computing experience, right? Which is where your field of view is now got not only the computing experience, but it's got even the analog world. So the digital and analog come together. My view is that there's just a dial, whether you want to be completely immersed, that's VR, or you want to have augmented. And so we want to build, whether it's the devices like HoloLens. In fact, tomorrow we have another event where we're going to talk a lot more about essentially just like how you bought a mouse and a keyboard and attached it to a PC. For $200 you can now just buy any HMD device from multiple sources, and it'll be like an ability for you to completely be immersed in experiences. So that'll be VR. We have HoloLens, which is, in fact, we found that it's changing how people work. And the killer app for it is all these collaborations that happens within enterprises between even frontline workers and designers. So at Boeing, you can now see them really not only do the aircraft design, but the people who are in their sales side can collaborate with the designers while the plane is being constructed. So that ability to reimagine how work gets done across a new medium is what we are focused on.
What do you think some of the key interesting, what do you think the first interesting applications in work from a mixed reality will be? Are they in the field? Are they in the manufacturing line? Medicine? What are some?
Great. I mean, let's take some examples, right? Take the first year anatomy class at Cleveland Clinic is being taught using HoloLens because it's much easier for both the teacher and the student to get anatomy using holograms that are right there. Take the example of Ford. The way they're using HoloLens is to completely change the design process. I had not realized that even until recently, the way you designed cars was to build a clay model, which would weigh something like 5,000 pounds, and then you would move it so that people could actually comment on it. Whereas now you're using HoloLens, there's a hologram, you can even have the people from your sales team and engineering comment on it, leave voice annotations on it. It's completely changed the design process. Design, like, take anyone who is, Trimble, which is, does a lot of architectural work and has basically design applications, is able to build digital twins for these physical locations. In fact, one of the things is for a mine operation, they built a visualization, which is the twin of it, and they're able to sort of literally see everything that's happening in the physical plant and thereby optimize the physical plant. So that's the spectrum. And of course, there's gaming. And when it comes to VR, we will always have video and gaming. But one of the things at least we are very focused on at Microsoft is to sort of look at the broad spectrum usage in these new scenarios. And the most salient or interesting point I found was, in the past, mostly knowledge workers were the ones who had, let's say, laptops or PCs or even phones that the company would issue to them. Whereas now, HoloLens is being issued to every person in the front line, because they may be going to repair the oil rig, or they're going to repair the wind farm. They need to have this device which not only helps them get the CAD pictures or even assistance remotely. And so it's a fascinating thing to see how technology is, in fact, helping even middle-skill jobs.
Yep. And I think part of the reason I started with the mixed reality is it's a clear both indication of how we think about tooling and platforms, but also about human amplifying.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things I think probably most folks here may not have as clear a view on is how Microsoft approaches artificial intelligence. Because frequently the dialogue is around the replacement. Oh, now the AI can do it, et cetera, versus the human amplifying. So say a little bit about how Microsoft and you are thinking about artificial intelligence.
I think, first of all, AI is, I think, perhaps one of the more profound technologies of our time. But one of the key decisions I think we all get to make as designers of AI or creators of AI is that first design choice, because I do believe it's going to be path dependent. In other words, the choices we make are going to define where we end up. So I feel that the first design principle that guides us at Microsoft is let's empower humans with AI versus try to, or in other words, augment human capability versus replace human capability. I'll give you practical example of it. We launched an app called Seeing AI. It's available on the Apple App Store. It uses the latest computer vision technology in our cloud to take anyone who has visual impairment and give them capability that is hard for them today. In fact, one of my colleagues, Angela Mills at Microsoft, she used to be someone I worked very closely with in my early days at Microsoft, and she still works at Microsoft. And she was telling me this story where she can now go into the cafeteria and order her food with confidence because she can take this app and see the ingredients. She can walk into a conference room even with confidence because she knows this is the right conference room versus barging into a meeting that she was not invited to. And so that means for the first time, Angela is feeling more confident of participating in the company because of AI. And another example is we took some of the technology we had in Microsoft Research, combined it with some of the reading capabilities. And so we now have learning tools in Word and in OneNote, so kids with dyslexia can read. Or even the latest release of Windows, we were inspired by Steve Gleason, an ALS patient, and said, okay, what is the input mechanism that somebody with ALS can have which will allow them to communicate? And it turns out that they have the eye gaze. So we now have eye gaze as a first-class input. These are all AIs that, in fact, help more people participate in our society, empower them, in fact, to get more of an economic return. And so I want us to grab hold of all of those opportunities and yet be clear-eyed about the unintended consequences of AI. So that's the approach we're taking.
And one of the other parts of it that I think people here don't know about is there's also an intention, because usually with modern machine learning, it's throw all the data in a pile and do a lot of learning from it. So it's the massive aggregation of data pile. But the problem, of course, is there's privacy and other kinds of considerations. So what are some of the ways that Microsoft's thinking about, look, this is how, in addition to the amplifying human capabilities, these are the ways that we're doing human protection around privacy and similar issues?
I mean, in fact, yes, that'll be another one of those places where we will have to build trust in the AI we create. Everything from, for example, we as creators of AI will have to make the AI intelligible, not just intelligent, and take accountability for it. Because I think that unless and until we do that, there's not going to be trust. I can't say, here's a learning algorithm, I don't know what it does, you should use it. It's kind of hard. You need to be able to really say, okay, I actually have a responsibility. And that's, I think, state-of-the-art challenge, which is how do I make AI intelligible. But you bring up even the tougher question around that transparency around where is my data, what is the data being used for, and are you protecting my privacy? That sort of leads to another principled stance we have taken. For example, one of the things that I think is going to go to the Supreme Court now is the case we have on the warrant that the government of the United States issued to access data in an Irish data center. You could say, hey, that's got nothing to do with, that's a data sovereignty issue, what does it have to do with AI? I fundamentally believe all of these things are all related, because ultimately it comes down to our responsibility as a company to protect, secure, and then protect the data and the privacy of the data of any customer or any organization. And in order to do that, we also have to understand that, look, we live within the context of countries that need to protect the safety of their citizens. And so therefore, how does one balance this out? The only way to balance that out is to be able to have real transparency in terms of what laws around national security apply and then how do they really countervail the privacy issues. So that's where I think we also have to be very mindful.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's like privacy, transparency of what's going on, accountability of the algorithms, and knowing what happens, because when you have these complex learning algorithms, well, what is it really, which output is it really functioning on?
That's right.
So the next part on, I think, the AI side is that I don't think a lot of folks realize the depth of services, which Microsoft calls cognitive services, which it's building into Azure, to try to make these AI tools available for developers. Because the natural thing is to say, look, if you're building programs for consumers and other kinds of things, well, we're not competing with you. Here's a whole set of services that come from the depth of our technology stack. What are some of those services, and what are some interesting today uses of them?
Yeah, that's a great, because in some sense, a lot of our AI capability comes from having built HoloLens, and that obviously requires us to crack essentially computer vision, or building into Skype and Skype Translate everything that we are doing with speech, both speech translation, speech synthesis, machine translation, all coming together. So what we've done is put these all as APIs in Azure, whether it's the NLP, basically all of the knowledge APIs, the NLP API, speech vision. A good use case is, in fact, Airbnb using it to even do a verification of whether the image and the description match. Uber using it for driver identification. McDonald's using speech, which is a very fascinating one, because the throughput of the McDonald's store depends on how efficient is their drive-through. And one of the unique things about our APIs is they're just not APIs, but they can be trained for your specific data. In this case, the ambient noise of a McDonald's is different than your home. And so the ability to train for that. So these are some good practical examples. But we have, whether it's the higher level services we have in Azure or the raw infrastructure. OpenAI, for example, is a big user of Azure for just literally raw compute in order to be able to drive their capability.
And actually, one thing that's important as people begin to think about AI as global applications, whether it's autonomous vehicles or anything else, is that Azure is one of those few computing platforms that's actually everywhere in the world.
That's right. And one of the things that we have tried to do is two things. One is, I like to say, especially in the Silicon Valley, I should say this, which is we have chosen in a principled way, quite frankly, to build trust and say we are in that technology platform and tools business. So that means we're not going to compete by starting our own car company or our own drug company or our own whatever else company. We want to be a platform company and a tools company. And then having done that, made that choice, we now need to support the ambitions of the automaker, the drug company maker, to participate in different countries under different jurisdiction and data sovereignty. So we run a cloud in China under Chinese law. We run a cloud in Germany under German law, as opposed to saying, oh, it's a simple world. I have this cloud infrastructure built for one consumer service, and it'll serve all the enterprise needs. So those are some of the specific choices we've made.
Yep. And then also, one of the things that I think is an interesting blooming of Microsoft under your management is that you actually engage a lot intellectually with Silicon Valley. You come down here, you talk to folks, you encourage developers. Microsoft Ventures is trying to figure out what are the ways that we can use these tools to help empower startups. So there's a whole set of ways that startups and developers should look at these tools, something like, here's something we're trying to empower you with just because we're a platform and tools company. And I think that's one of the really important things that I had learned as we had started talking. I was like, got it. I see where this is going. And that was part of the reason I asked that question.
Yeah, and it's super important to me. Quite frankly, I know we have a history with Silicon Valley. And that said, I think one of the things at least I learned at Microsoft when I joined the company in 1992 as an evangelist for Windows NT is that we are most successful when we are that true platform company that really is driving for success of other software companies or other platform companies trying to co-innovate with you. And that is the ethos that made us successful in the first place, and I want us to get back to it.
So one of the things that's frequently kind of discussed is AI in these very broad terms, right? There's this question about, are robots coming for the jobs? There's this question about, my friend Elon frequently goes out and is like saying, the robots are coming for us, right? What, in this grand kind of large picture AI future, what do you think are the key things to building this human-centric AI future? What are the things that you think we as a technology industry, we as Microsoft, what are the kind of key principles that people should think about?
Yeah, it's a great one. And especially, that control problem, quite frankly, I think this is where my thesis of it's path dependent. If we choose to lose control, we'll lose control. But if we started by saying the human is in control, human is in the loop, let's think about empowerment. That's where I think even these partnerships around AI, these groups we form as an industry, how do we share the best practices around making AI intelligible, so important. Not just even in Silicon Valley. I think we definitely need to even bring some of the Chinese AI companies into this dialogue, because trying to have a conversation now and say it's all about just Silicon Valley without including China is just not going to, it's just not a practical thing. So that's sort of at least for the runaway control or optimization or the control challenge. But the other interesting thing is, let's reason even about the technological displacement problem, which is the other issue. And there, I think we have to start by not falling complete victim to this lump of labor fallacy, right? And that's where, quite frankly, LinkedIn can be a huge source of at least one signal, right? Let's be practical and look at what are the jobs, what are the skills for those jobs, what's the training required, not as a static thing, but as something that's dynamic as things evolve, as new jobs get created. And so that then we can, whether it's the boys and girls in schools or whether it's even anyone who is faced with displacement at work, can go retrain. And we as a society will have to invest in that. So it's not going to come for free, but we have to be committed. Companies like ours has to be committed to it. But let's also think about all of these additional new jobs that can get created. One of the things that I've been sort of reading up a lot is, in a world where there's a lot of AI, what scarce probably is going to be real intelligence. And so how do we, like, for example, the jobs around physical therapists or assistants to physical. David Otter, who's an MIT economist who talks very articulately about what this would mean, is he does point out to many other professions that can, in fact, be growth professions. People-on-people jobs where there is real dignity in the work, I think can be a great source. Or even these digital artisanal jobs. When I look at Minecraft and the Minecraft generation, I look at art in the world of digital that can, in fact, be a source of income. Lastly, I would just make one point, which is ultimately you do need wage support for a lot of these jobs. And that's where I think we should go back and look at our own history when there has been great returns on capital, but low returns on labor. We have come up with solutions for it. There are many solutions in the Valley that people espouse, and let's put them all into the toolkit. But I think we can even go after it. As long as people can find dignity in meaningful work, I think we can always solve for the rate of return challenge.
And the other thing I think is particularly what I've appreciated getting to know the Microsoft approach is also the whole notion of how do we build tools to empower human beings?
That's right.
Right? Not like how do we factor human beings out completely, but what are the ways that you amplify? And that whole tool and platform approach is something that could also, not just in the LinkedIn skills and reskilling, but enabling people to do the alternative jobs better. I think that's something that, having now spent a bunch of time at Microsoft, I really appreciate that angle.
Just one other example which really hit home for me, because if you look at the number of articles that are written about, hey, all radiologists are going to be displaced by technology, except one of the partnerships between University of Washington and Cambridge in the UK is around really helping radiologists come up with the radiotherapies using computer vision so that they can take the tediousness out of their job, where today it's both tedious and sometimes error-prone, and spend more time with the patient. That's at least the first step where AI can help before we go all the way and say, radiologists are going to be displaced. And that's, I think, a bit of how we should learn to practice and then evolve.
So now let's move to the area that totally boggles my brain. Thus far, everything was in the zone, but quantum computing, right? Which you actually, I was surprised, actually, you devote some pages to in Hit Refresh. What can we see coming in quantum computing, and how do you look at that as another technological amplifier? Yeah,
I mean, this has been fascinating for me to watch, and not that I know much about quantum. This is the one thing even Bill says he hardly, he hardly understands, which is sort of like stunning to me. Here's the context for it for a bit, which is you sort of say, wow, look at the amount of progress we've made as an industry. It's like the Xbox One X that's going to come out is going to have 7 billion transistors. The first supercomputers, I believe, had around 13,000 of them. So we have a lot of computing power. And we're solving, obviously, all these deep learning challenges and throwing a lot of elastic compute at it. But the reality is we still can model that enzyme that's in the food production. We can't figure out, hey, here's a catalyst that can absorb carbon, or build this new material that's going to be superconducting at high temperature for lossless power transmission or what have you. So that means there are computational challenges that are unsolvable today, or will take as much time as from Big Bang to now. Then you say, okay, if that's the case, what do? We got to invent a new computer. At least at Microsoft, 10 years ago, quite frankly, we got started. And the idea was not to even achieve one of these another parlor tricks of creating quantum supremacy in the lab, but to say, what is a real scalable quantum computer that can be a general purpose quantum computer? So you needed to first bet on some theory that will allow you to stabilize these qubits, and lots of them. And so I've now spent a lot of time with Michael Friedman, who's a Fields Medal winner, who works at Microsoft. And he told me, do you know your square roots? And I said, what do you mean square roots? I thought, I didn't pay attention to square roots, but tell me more. But nevertheless, he has really this math called topological matter. Or rather, there is a particular phenomena of topological matter that allows you to be able to stabilize, or at least theoretically prove, that these qubits can be stable. Then, of course, you've got to go to the physics. That means you've got to be able to find actual physical instantiation of the topological matter. And that's where we have a couple of world-class physicists who at least are at the transistor stage of it. We now need to scale it to the IC and beyond, where we can say these Majorana particles are the ones that actually instantiate this topological matter. And then, of course, ultimately, you need a completely different computer science stack because von Neumann is no longer valid. And so that's what we're trying to put. Our quantum program has really got this unique math, unique physics, and unique computer science. But the first step, which only Microsoft could do, is what do? Like what we did with the Altair is what we are doing with the quantum, which is come up with a domain-specific language, put it into Visual Studio, put the simulator in Azure, and say, let's go have fun. Let's start building computer programs for the quantum. And that's in something that end of this year, people will be able to at least go use the simulator to start programming. And we'll plan to make more progress.
And so the reason I thought that was an important question to ask is for you all to think, this quantum computing thing, I should understand it. I'm not sure how many of us understood the technological depth that Satya just went into. So I'm going to retreat back on my last question to something a little easier, and then we'll open to the audience. Where has artificial intelligence made your job as Microsoft CEO easier or more productive?
That's a great one. Every day, there's this one feature of Cortana. I tell you, it's my favorite thing. So if I say, Reid, if I send you a piece of email, and I say, I'll follow up day after tomorrow, and lo and behold, day after tomorrow, it's going to wake up and tell me, you said you're going to do this day after tomorrow. Have you done it? And I tell you, the number of times it saves me is unimaginable. But I need more of it. Like we have this nice feature in Outlook called Focused Inbox. I love it, but I need that Focused Inbox to be super Focused Inbox because it just needs to get smarter and smarter. It needs to understand my activities and my priorities and temporally adjust. And this is like Bill's favorite thing. So whenever I say, have you made some progress, he'll tell me, you've not made any progress. See, look at my inbox.
Yeah, Bill's especially.
And but AI in every day, like just higher understanding of semantics. In fact, this is my another favorite thing I I was talking to Joshua Bengio, who works with us, who is one of the big researchers in deep learning out of Montreal. And I said, look, you know what? I need AI that's going to crack this ultimate problem. I mean, if it reads Hamlet and it can figure out that Iago is possessed by the devil, that's when you have real AI.
Yes.
Just imagine if it can judge human character for you.
Yeah, although that might be scary in all kinds of other ways. And so with that, I think we are going to audience questions. Looks like we have one in the back. I think, raise your hand, yes.
Hey, hi. So voice clear? Okay. So to the last point about, I actually have two questions, but the first one is to the Hamlet question. Do you think like AI can compose poetry and stuff in the near future? And the second one is for the both of you, especially Reid, who's like focused a lot on politics and democracy and all of the stuff surrounding it right now. Going back a little bit to the basic income thing that you guys were talking about, do you see a future where the AI starts making money autonomously and then just like gives it for like people and stuff for like as sort of like low-level wage replacement of some sorts? Thanks.
I'll take the first one. And
Thanks.
and then I'll let my friend Reid. Look, I mean, the reality is, I mean, since you brought up poetry, it's interesting. There's a bot that we have in China called Xiaoeyes, which is doing super well. It's, I think, maybe north of 50, 60 million daily users of it. It's a social bot. And in fact, one of the most stunning things is its conversation lengths are huge. So we've, in fact, taken that same technology and it's composed poetry. And there's a published book in China, which is one of the bestsellers, is a poetry book published by Xiaoeyes. But your deeper question is it poetry? Is it poetry as we humans understand it? And that's where I think this manipulation of this high-dimensional vector space and magic happens. Is that the same thing as what we as humans do when we sort of take what we have learned from our life's experience and abstract it into sort of what is prose or poetry? I don't think so. So I think we have to sort of be very mindful of what we call computer-generated as a real substitute to sort of what is human-developed. Similarly, for example, in art, like there was this beautiful piece of work we did with the Tate Museum in the UK, where we said, let's just read the headlines of the day, right? And create art that somehow captures the headlines of the day using, let's say, impressionist painters as inspiration. And it was coming up with absolute novel paintings. It's just stunning to me. But is that art? These are, I think, unanswered questions. I sort of say, well, there is some real fascinating math tricks that seem to be working with lots and lots of data being fed to it. Let's, in fact, exploit it to empower humans. But let us not get all the way carried away to think that this is human quality poetry or human quality art. So that's at least my take on it.
And by the way, the other thing will be interesting is not just poetry, but when you actually mix reality together with AI being generative and creative things, what kinds of art will show up there will be super interesting.
That's right.
Not just poetry. And then on the UBI side, look, the optimist case is we're trying to figure out how do we enable more and more humans to do less repetitive things, more creative things, more socially interactive things, but not necessarily force them to do so. So, for example, if people say, look, I'm a little uncomfortable being that creative, being a poet, et cetera, I would like to just have my work amplified. And that's, I think, the right design target that we want with AI. Now, obviously, that will cause a lot of transformation in different kinds of jobs and different kinds of income. I think what's interesting about AI is it's not just the typical lower wage job transformation, but also the higher end, like the earlier radiologist. So I think it's across the spectrum that we need to figure it out. And ultimately, of course, if we could live without a fear of lack of shelter or lack of food, which maybe is what UBI represents, I think that's a nobler society. And so with that, I think next question. Okay, here.
Sorry, I'm still mind blown with the AI conversation. Back to your culture point, how would you define Microsoft's customer today? And could you talk a little bit about how that's evolved over the years?
Microsoft's what, sorry?
Customer. Who's your customer?
Customer. Yeah, it's the core of Microsoft is about serving individuals. Now, that's why if I look at even the mission statement, we talk about empowering people and organizations. But here's the interesting thing. I relate people and organizations. What I mean by that is, for us, when we build software, in most cases, we think of that connection between people and organization as a first-class software construct. In other words, groups of people coming together to build institutions that in many cases even is going to outlast them, to me, is a software construct. So most people say, hey, are you a consumer company or an enterprise company? As I said, hey, we are a tools and a platform company that will appeal to people as individuals, but also within the context of their institution or organization they're trying to build. That's who we are at the core. OneNote, hey, is it going to be used at work? Of course. Is it going to be used in a classroom? Of course. Should I use it for my daily notes? Absolutely. Should I have ability to sort of manage my tasks in my family, be separate from the way I do task management at work? That's how we think about it. Having said all of that, there's one other thing that Microsoft does, which is gaming. For us, what we do with Xbox, what we do with PC gaming, Xbox Live has got 55 million subscribers, and we're building essentially the Netflix for gaming using the subscription. Mix is our streaming service. So we have a full-on agenda around gaming. But if you sort of set aside that as a first-class thing that we do, everything else at Microsoft is about tools and platforms for individuals and organizations.
Next question. There's a mic here? Where's the mic? Oh, so the people with the mic have to find the people who have their hands up. I don't know. Oh, here we go.
Hi, Satya. I want to rewind things back from AI to the much harder problem of empowering all people. You spoke about Minecraft just a bit, and I was Googling a bunch of stuff, sorry. And I came across Minecraft for Education. And I want to hear your thoughts on how you're going to use that tool to change the culture of learning, or if that's even your goal, or if you just want to make school more fun, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's a great question because the thing that we have recognized with Minecraft, and in fact, that's what attracted me to even that franchise, which is, it's of course the best-selling game ever on PCs and consoles and now even on the phone. But the thing about it is it's an open world environment. So what we now are very focused on is Minecraft and Edu. In fact, last summer we had tremendous success in terms of even summer programs around it. It helps boys and girls, and in particular girls, get more interested in STEM because of Minecraft. Because in some sense, most people say that the curriculum of computer science needs to evolve so that it can attract a more diverse class. Minecraft has that diversity, quote unquote, built into it because it's an open world. What boys build or what girls build can be different, and it can be both equally celebrated, and both can equally sort of instill in you computational thinking. So that's what has led us to invest quite a bit on Minecraft in Edu, and that's a full-fledged program. In fact, we are working with many Silicon Valley companies that are also building tools that can integrate. So different languages and different IDEs can then also be used to program the Minecraft worlds. So we've taken even an approach where it's just not about our stuff, but it can scaffold with other efforts in education. So we are very excited about Minecraft and Edu, and it's a first-class effort for us.
Tools and platform.
That's right. It's tools and platforms.
Next question.
Thank you both. This is a fascinating conversation. We actually work with Stanford and Mayo Clinic and applied machine learning there, so it's actually fascinating. I guess my question for both Satya and Reid is, knowing all that you know now, what one advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
But, look, the thing that I would say is don't wait for your next job to do your best work. When I look back at it, as I've written, as I said, look, I was very poor academically, as my parents would attest. And somehow or the other, at least, I got into this thing about, hey, every day I'm going to learn some. And I understand it more. So now, in retrospect, than I did. So therefore, I'd make it more explicit, let me put it that way. Because I think that the ability to sort of take whatever opportunity, like most people say, oh, were you waiting to be CEO? I said, no. In fact, the first job I had at Microsoft, I thought was like the most amazing, ultimate job I should ever have, and I'd be happy. And then I got the next, and then the next. And never sort of was I sort of saying, wow, I need to wait for this next job to do my best work.
And in a sense, my answer to that question is the first book, which is a startup review, which the learning mindset there is referred to being in permanent beta, which is always be treating it as learning. And I think that's the key thing, which is to most deliberately and effectively accelerate your learning curve through the actions you're doing, the people you're talking to, and be certain that if you don't have explicitly a bunch of things that you know that you need to be learning and how you're doing it, then you're not approaching the task the right way. And I think we're at last question.
This question is about shareholder return and your goal of human empowerment. How do you reconcile these things? Because I think it's a very big challenge for technology companies, particularly when actually driving the digital transformation of other companies. So how do you see this when, in fact, sometimes in the name of shareholder return, really people are treated extremely badly?
It's a great question. One of the things that I'd say has been perhaps one of the bigger learnings for me, at least 3 years or 3.5 years or so as CEO, is how multi-constituent really companies have to be. Of course, shareholders are super important. So are our employees, so are our customers, so are our partners, so are governments. And by the way, you have to harmonize all these interests all the time. So it's not even I'll compartmentalize them. And take in our case, in fact, if there's one thing that I feel most excited about, most proud about, and most confident about is Microsoft's core business model, right? It's not just the mission of empowerment, it's backed up by the business model. Whether I'm coming down to California, or I'm going to the UK, or I'm going to Turkey, I can confidently talk about the surplus that has been created around us. What are the small businesses that have become more productive? What are the large businesses local to that economy that have become more competitive? How is the public sector in those countries, in those regions, become more efficient because of our technology? What are the health outcomes or the educational outcomes that we have been able to impact? I believe, unless and until multinational companies in particular, the larger they are, if they cannot articulate in very clear terms the surplus, the opportunity that gets created around them, there's no long-term stability. Because as you rightfully put it, everyone wants to know, whether it's a citizen in a region or a government official, how has your participation in my economy helped our country, our region? And you need to be able to answer that. And I think shareholders should really reward companies that have that long-term equation right. That's, I think, where I think we have to evolve, and I think it's a very, very important question, because if it's all about shareholders rewarding only short-term rent-seeking, then I think we get into a vicious cycle, and that doesn't end well.
I think that's an excellent note to thank Satya for being here with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Before you leave, Satya.
No, actually, not quite yet. I think.
we're not.
We have to have the ceremonial presentation of the speaker T-shirt.
One more thing. Yes, exactly.
Really, thank you so much for sharing this inspiring, authentic conversation with us. We really appreciate it. Please wear that T-shirt in very good health indeed. A recording of this program will be available in about 24 hours on our YouTube channel. We ask that you kindly share it with people in your circles who weren't able to be with us tonight. You've been a terrific audience. We have a special gift for each of you as well. It is a complimentary signed copy of Satya Nadella's new book, Hit Refresh. And you can pick that up on the way out, but first, let's enjoy dinner. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Sure.